After suffering a great defeat at the hands of his newly revealed father, Luke would face many challenges both within and without. The next step on his road to becoming a Jedi would be to return to the place he had just left. Sometime after his departure from the fleet, Lando would return, suggesting that he and Luke return to Cloud City, partially out of his own guilt for abandoning his people to the Empire, and also to see if Luke's lightsaber might still be there. As the two talk, Luke is prompted with a vision of a hooded woman, encouraging him to embrace his destiny. Traveling back to Bespin with R2, Lando, and Leia, a heavy Imperial presence forces the crew to split up. Luke and R2 would travel to the smelting chamber, but realizing it was a fool's errand, would leave once Luke sensed his friends were in danger. Rescuing his friends from stormtroopers using only the Force, Luke was finally beginning to understand that the lightsaber itself did not make him a Jedi. He parts ways with the group for the time being, flying off in his now recovered X-Wing to find the woman from his earlier vision. Matching the planet in his vision to the best of his ability, he pilots his X-Wing to Sorelia. Here he would encounter Verla, the woman from his vision. She tells him of a Jedi outpost on an astronomical object by the name of Tempes in the Outer Rim. Nearly crashing on the object due to its weather, Luke would enter the outpost and find a yellow-bladed saber, which he would wield for a time. He also duels the spirit of the Grand Inquisitor, whom Vader had condemned to guard the location for all eternity. He returns to the rebellion with his new lightsaber, ready to lead again. Joining the hunt for Han Solo, Luke accompanies Chewie and 3PO to Nar Shaddaa. As he meets up with Leia, she would inform Luke that there would be an auction for Han on Jakara, organized by the crime syndicate Crimson Dawn. Arriving on Jakara, Luke is struck by a vision of Vader arriving close to that same time. Before he could go much further, the presence of Imperial ships and TIE fighters over the planet all but confirms what he had seen. Attempting to at least distract Vader while his friends rescued Han, Luke lures Vader's ship into a trap in the polar sea of the planet. Not so easily bested, Vader still manages to shoot Luke down. However, an urgent call for reinforcements in another attack on the Empire would pull Vader away from the pursuit. The operation itself failed, and Boba Fett had once again recaptured Solo, this time from Crimson Dawn. As the weight of his training continues to bear heavily on Luke, he begins to realize that he is indeed the last of the Jedi. Luke would undergo a series of quests, learning more about the history of the Order, and in the process furthering his own philosophy as a Jedi. During this time, he visits various historical sites pertaining to the Fallen Order, including trips to Ilum, where he would encounter a former hub of the Force, as well as kyber crystals ruined by Imperial exploitation. The planet Arashar gives a similar experience, and Luke also visits a Jedi temple on Lothal, which you might recognize as Ezra's home in Rebels. All of these had been exploited by the Empire, or were fruitless endeavors for Luke. On one outing to Al Dolim, Luke encounters a Jedi holocron of Yoda teaching lessons in the Force. One mentions Vergences, or a nexus in the Force. One such location that was mentioned is the living sea of Gazian, where Luke travels to next. Finding a sea of mushrooms on the planet, Luke would fall unconscious when his breathing mask slips off. In this newfound dream state, Luke converses with a Jedi Master by the name of Elzar Mann, a Jedi during the High Republic era. He explains to Luke that Gazian took imprints of the mind and reproduced them at the time of contact. Luke and Elzar discuss many things: Yoda, the Force, and the idea of falling to the dark side, all while sitting in an imprint of Ahch-To, now known as the birthplace of the Jedi. Mon tries to convince Skywalker that Jedi step up to perform many roles, but that he didn't have to be one at the end of the day. He would still be able to act as a light and do good regardless. He offers Luke more counsel and a place to stay, but Luke would refuse, knowing he had to get back to the world he was now so greatly a part of. An imprint of Luke would remain, perhaps a sliver of doubt that he can now leave behind in the sea. Luke would have a few more travels before his final attempt to rescue Solo, constructing his new green lightsaber in the process. One of its first outings would be during a raid on an Imperial refinery platform M36 in the Outer Rim. Luke returns to his home planet of Tatooine as part of an operation to rescue Han Solo from the clutches of Jabba the Hutt. But first, he makes his way to Kenobi's old hut, where he finds lightsaber parts to properly transition to his new weapon. Receiving word from Leia that she had successfully infiltrated Jabba's palace, Luke makes his way there. Upon arrival, he would use his developing mastery of the Force to march straight into the palace, all the way to Jabba's throne room. After defeating Jabba's Rancor, Luke, Han, and Chewbacca are taken to the Great Pit of Carkoon, a Sarlacc pit in the Dune Sea. As the chaos of their escape ensues, Leia kills Jabba, Boba Fett is swallowed by the Sarlacc, the barge is destroyed, and the entire group makes their triumphant escape. Luke and R2 part ways with the rest, so he can complete his training with Yoda on Dagobah. Upon arrival, it is evident the Jedi Master is succumbing to old age. Encouraging Luke to confront Vader a final time, he would also give Luke his blessing that he had trained all he could. He would warn Luke to be wary of the Emperor's power and the dark side of the Force as a whole. Finally, he would inform Luke that there was indeed another Skywalker. Luke would then confer with the ghost of Kenobi outside the hut. Luke argues with Kenobi that there is still good in his father, and says he couldn't kill him if the decision was left to him. Kenobi would also confirm that Leia is Luke's sister. Luke returns to the Alliance and accompanies his friends on a mission to the forest moon of Endor. On the planet, they would interfere with Imperial forces, aiding the native Ewoks in the process. After revealing to Leia that they are siblings, Luke goes off to allow the Empire to capture him. As Vader escorts his son to the second Death Star, Luke begins to address Vader as father and Anakin, stirring conflict within the Dark Lord. Within the throne room of the Death Star, Luke would meet the Emperor, who would offer Luke the place of apprentice that Vader currently held. As the young Jedi refuses, the Emperor would play on Luke's emotions, threatening the lives of his friends. When Luke finally draws his saber, he would meet only that of his father's, thus commencing their final duel. As Vader taunts about turning Leia to the dark side, Luke briefly gives in to his anger, overpowering his father. Sidious would fail at turning Luke a final time, and Vader would find redemption after witnessing the torment of his son. After seeing his father's face for the first time and witnessing his death, Luke escapes the failing space station just before it explodes. Back on the surface of the forest moon, Luke gives his father a Jedi funeral, and within the victory celebration, he witnesses the Force ghost of Anakin Skywalker join those of Obi-Wan and Yoda. After the formation of the New Republic, Luke would feel a pull to the planet Pilio in the Janata system. Leaving R2 with his X-Wing, it is there that he discovers Del Meeko of Inferno Squad, an Imperial Special Forces unit infamous among the Rebellion. He saves Del Meeko from Skritters, some of the planet's native wildlife. The two would work together to discover one of the Emperor's old observatories. He would not blame Del Meeko for any of his choices in the Empire, but would leave him with the encouragement that he could always choose to be a better person, despite his past. Luke leaves the planet with a Jedi star compass, a wayfinder tool which would eventually help him seek out planets such as Ahch-To. Acting on the need to re-establish the Jedi Order, Luke takes on his first apprentice, Leia. The two would train on the jungle moon of Agen Kloss, using many of the techniques Yoda had used with him on Dagobah. Leia would prove to be a promising student. However, on the final night of her training, Leia experiences a vision involving the death of her unborn son, Ben Solo. Putting her training aside, she would resolve to focus on family and her position in the New Republic. In 5 ABY, Luke, along with R2, would enlist Shara Bey in a mission to the planet Vatine in order to recover a fragment of a Force-sensitive tree, which had once belonged to the Jedi Temple on Coruscant. They sneak into the base and steal the fragments of the tree and fight their way out. Luke encourages Shara to take leave from the Alliance, sending her on her way with a fragment of the tree. Shara would then reunite with her husband, Kes Dameron, and their son Poe on Yavin 4. Later in the same year, Luke would largely go off-radar in the public eye, as he would be determined to kickstart the Order, traveling to many worlds, in which he would learn more about his own journey as a Jedi. He collects relics such as the Journal of Caleb Doom, also known as Canon Jarrus, as well as many ancient texts on the Jedi, while also seeking students and a home for the Order to rebuild. He is assisted by Lor San Tekka from time to time, a member of the Church of the Force, who didn't believe the old Imperial propaganda that the Jedi had attempted to overthrow the Republic. He visits Gadalenta as one of his final destinations, a site of deep connection to the Force and Jedi tradition. He also visits the ancient home of the Sith on Moraband, or as it is also known, Korriban, to investigate the Force. Most notably, Luke would visit Tython on more than one occasion, a deep core world with a massive and ruined Jedi temple. Luke would source many texts from this temple during his travels to and from the planet. Using the star compass he had acquired on Pilio, and with the help of San Tekka, Luke would find a path to the first Jedi temple on Ahch-To, an island world which he had seen a glimpse of while in the living sea of Gazian years earlier. During his travels in 9 ABY, Luke would feel the presence of a Jedi reaching out to him through the Seeing Stone on Tython. Luke follows the call into space, leading him to an Imperial Remnant cruiser. He boards the ship in his X-Wing and dispatches with a battalion of Dark Troopers as he progresses closer to the Jedi. Finally arriving at the bridge, he would meet Grogu, the Jedi who had called out to him. To his surprise, this Jedi is the same species as Yoda, but much younger. He would allow Grogu to choose freely, leaving behind his Mandalorian companion Din Djarin, as well as the others who had fought to rescue him. Grogu goes with Luke to begin his formal training. Luke brings Grogu to Ossus, along with R2, where he had begun the construction of a Jedi temple. Slowly but surely, Grogu begins to remember his own training at the Jedi Temple on Coruscant, but his connection to the Mandalorian would inhibit his training from reaching maximum potential. Ahsoka Tano, Anakin's former apprentice and friend, would encourage Luke to offer Grogu the choice of continuing his training or returning to the Mandalorian. Ultimately, Grogu would choose the path of a Mandalorian and is taken by R2 in Luke's X-Wing back to Tatooine. Years later, in 15 ABY, Luke begins training his nephew, Ben Solo, taking the boy on as his first official student. The two would travel the galaxy together, learning as much as they could about the Jedi, while training Ben at the same time. Their relationship would be strong, but strained over time due to the complex nature of the Force in their family. 4 years later, Luke and Ben travel to an old Jedi outpost on Elphrona in search of Jedi artifacts. After finding an impressive treasure trove inside, they are suddenly ambushed by a group of mysterious warriors. Their leader would reveal that they go by the name of Ren and claim ownership over the treasure. Luke would fight the group, choosing not to harm any of them in the process. Realizing that they would surely lose this fight, the leader withdraws his warriors, but not before proclaiming that a darkness was stirring within Ben. Over the next few years, Luke begins to train new apprentices, finally beginning to understand how Yoda and Kenobi had felt years earlier, now knowing both the mission and frustrations of his former masters. In 21 ABY, Luke continues to feel a great darkness stirring in the Force, having visions of some dark world, but it was vague and unclear if it was a real place. However, unknown to Luke, a primary source of such a darkness was being fostered within his own nephew and star student. Lor San Tekka would pay the Jedi a visit, asking him to come to a dig site on the planet of Yortuba in the Mid-Rim. While at the site, the duo discover that a Sith holocron and bled kyber crystals had been uncovered and had inflicted the mind of one of the diggers named Haswell. Luke would reach into the mind of the afflicted, being transported into a vision of what he would later discover to be Exegol. He finds Haswell behaving oddly within the dream, nearly reduced to a subhuman form. He also sees what appears to be a large, dark citadel, towering in the darkness. Medics inject Haswell, sedating him. This interaction would trouble Luke, who makes for Tython in hopes of finding answers. Luke travels up to the Seeing Stone, where he meditates. He sees Exegol in his mind, though this time, it's as if he were actually there, fighting off 9 Sith wraiths. He would struggle to block them all, with the bright lightning on the planet blinding him. As the 9 go in for the kill, they are blocked by an ethereal blue lightsaber, that of a Force ghost. The ghost is revealed to be Anakin Skywalker. Anakin reaches out his hand to Luke, transporting his son back to Tython. Anakin's spirit would fade as his power had been drained from the feat. He leaves his son with the advice to let the Force be his guide. Just then Lando arrives in his ship, Lady Luck. Lando informs Luke there is an assassin named Ochi of Bestoon who had bragged about being employed by a Sith remnant to kidnap a girl. Reports back this up, saying that the New Republic had relocated her family for their own protection. Lando shows Luke a hex charm that the family was now carrying after the attack, and Luke recognizes it as a Sith symbol. Luke shares his Exegol experiences with Lando, who affirmed that Ochi had also mentioned traveling to Exegol via a Sith wayfinder. Hoping the family may be their key to getting ahead of Ochi, the two set out to find them. Due to the gravity of the threat, Luke is hesitant to allow Lando to join him. However, learning of Lando's own daughter's kidnapping, he allows him to join in hopes of finding a connection. Luke goes with Lando to meet his contact in the Adelphi system. The contact, a Duros Alliance war hero named Shriv Surgav, gives them access to records which point them toward a mining facility called Nightside in the Therazar system. Lando and Luke make their way to Nightshade, only to find it under attack by Ochi's droid crush pirates. Luke would encounter a masked Pantorian woman during the attack, but they are separated as Luke escapes with Lando and the Pantorian in a TIE Defender. Lando tells Luke the family had been extracted via a contact's yacht, the Goldstone. They would follow the family briefly to Torrentier Minor, then to Polar to gain information from a contact named Komat, whom Luke had helped to leave her former life in a Sith artifact cult. Hoping to also have a way for the duo to keep track of the Goldstone in its travels, Komat would reveal that the masked woman Luke had encountered on Nightside was Kiza, a former leader of the Acolytes of the Beyond, the same cult she had once been a part of. Komat reveals that the mask allowed her to be taken over by a powerful ancient Sith Lord named Exim Panshard. The group is attacked by droids sent by Kiza. After the skirmish, Luke uses the navigational data within one of the droids to ensure Kiza would not make it to Exegol and bring back the Sith. Meanwhile, Lando and Komat head to Ta Provode to save the family. Luke tracks Kiza to an asteroid in the Red Honeycomb Zone. She expresses regret for her actions, but is unable to shake the hold the mask has over her. During their destructive duel, debris falls on Kiza, killing her. Luke is saddened by her death, as he had wished to redeem her. Receiving a holo message from Lando, Luke would hurry to Ta Provode to aid his allies in saving the family. Droids arrive at the asteroid soon after Luke's departure, reforging the mask with bled kyber crystals and reanimating Kiza's corpse with the spirit of Panshard. On Ta Provode, Luke fights Ochi, who had taken Lando and Komat captive. He bests Ochi with some difficulty, but Panshard as Kiza would appear piloting a TIE Defender, disrupting the confrontation. While Lando and R2 go after the family, Luke and Comat chase after Panchard to the solitary moon of the planet, shooting down his fighter. In their confrontation on the ice, Luke destroys the mask, killing the Sith for good. As Luke returns to Lando, he learns the bodies of the parents had been found, but not that of the young girl. Worried that Ochi may have taken the girl to Exegol, Lando and Luke continue searching for her. They track Ochi to Pasana and find his ship. While the trail for Ochi himself would prove a dead end, they had evidence to suggest he was on track to finding the Sith Wayfinder. With no other path, Luke returns to Ossus to continue training his students. These events would continue to weigh on his mind as he trains the Jedi, wondering about the Sith Wayfinder and the return of darkness. On Ossus in 28 ABY, Luke would pinpoint a great darkness in his nephew. As he draws his saber on Ben one night as he lay asleep, he hesitates, catching himself in the act and filled with regret. However, he would realize it was too late as he locks eyes with Ben, who brings the hut down upon his uncle, knocking him unconscious. When Luke awakes, the temple is in ruins, his apprentices missing or killed. R2 alone remains. Considering it his greatest failure, Luke exiles himself to Ahch-To, leaving a map behind with R2. Skywalker would live out his remaining days on Ahch-To, closing himself off from the Force and putting away his saber. The deeds of Luke would be resolved to legend, and many would consider him a fable. It would not be until 34 ABY that the Force called upon Luke once again, and this time he had to answer. He is found by Rey, a scavenger from Jakku, who had been sent by Leia to bring Luke back into the fight. Learning of the death of Han at the hands of Ben, now named Kylo Ren, Luke agrees to train Rey in the ways of the Jedi. During their training, he discovers Rey has great power, just like Ben. Soon he discovers that Rey and his estranged nephew are communicating through the Force. Reminded of his past failure, he temporarily loses trust in Rey, who leaves the planet. Reminded of his own rushed departure from Dagobah, Luke settles in for the night, defeated once again. The following night, he would be met by the ghost of Yoda, who reminds him that he was tasked with passing down the ways of the Jedi, and that the greatest teacher failure is. He implores Luke to let go of the books and the rituals. Be present in the moment. Be a Jedi. Luke performs his final act of heroism by force projecting himself onto Crate, where the Resistance is holding out in a final stand against the First Order. He distracts Kylo Ren, buying the Resistance enough time to flee to the Millennium Falcon and escape. Using all of his energy in the lifelike illusion, Luke collapses from exhaustion. Seeing the binary suns on Ahch-To, Luke is reminded of his home, and heeding the words of Kenobi, he lets go. Becoming one with the Force, Luke Skywalker would fade out of the physical world, finding peace and purpose. A year later, Rey visits Ahch-To in her most tumultuous moment. She attempts to throw the saber of Anakin Skywalker into a fire when Luke appears as a Force ghost, catching the blade in midair. He would console Rey, telling her she was not bound to a destiny because of her bloodline as a Palpatine, and that if Vader could be redeemed, so could Ben. He then raises his crashed X-Wing out of the ocean, giving it to Rey as a means to journey to Exegol. In Rey's final climactic battle with the resurrected Palpatine, Luke is among the voices Rey hears as encouragement to go on fighting. Later, after the defeat of the First and Final Order, Rey would travel to Tatooine, specifically to the old Lars homestead, now abandoned. She buries Luke and Leia's sabers there as a memorial. Appearing as a ghost alongside his sister, Luke nods in approval as Rey takes their last name, carrying on the Skywalker legacy. Thanks so much for watching our first video here on The Nerd Strike Back. If you want to support the channel, visit our Patreon page where you can also unlock exclusive perks. And let us know in the comments what characters and topics you'd like to see us cover on The Nerd Strike Back.